You want to finish what you started? You came to the right place. Them girls that you came with, you might have to part with. Depending on how this thing shakes. Wauwatosa, Kenosha, Oconomowoc is in the house.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The New Look. As I've mentioned in the previous two episodes, late last year, I had this weird idea where I was going to interview all of the members of Congress who were retiring, Democrats and Republicans, and learn interesting things from their career and get their views on how Congress has changed and how we can fix Congress. I got 3 interviews in, and that took about a month, because it was so hard to schedule everybody. But then the coronavirus disrupted my plans, and I thought it would still be worth bringing these few conversations I recorded to you for a few special episodes of the New Look podcast. And this is the final interview of these conversations, and it features my conversation with Representative Mike Conaway, who was first elected to Congress in 2005 and represents the 11th Congressional District in Texas. Representative Conaway currently serves as the ranking member of the House Committee on Agriculture. He also served for a period of time as the ranking member or the top Republican on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He's had a fascinating career, if for no other reason than he played on the high school football team that Friday Night Lights is based off of. And that Friday Night Lights is probably in the top 3 TV shows of all time. I would put The Wire and Justified ahead of it, but it is still in the top 3. Possibly Luther. Don't forget Luther. Without further ado, I don't even remember if Mike and I talked about TV. We mostly talked about his congressional career. He's had a really fascinating career. He sort of, on one level, I think if you met Mike, you'd think he was a very sort of intimidating guy, but he also has one of the best senses of humor in Congress, which I very much appreciate and I think is necessary in times like the ones we're in right now. And so without further ado, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Representative Mike Conaway. Well, I'm honored to be joined by Mike Conaway from the great country of Texas. Republic of Texas. Once in future, Republic of Texas. Chairman Conaway, thank you so much for being with me.
Well, appreciate it, Michael. Appreciate being here. Thank you very much. I'm honored, flattered that you'd include me in the group because there's a whole lot more than retiring than you can get around to, so I appreciate being among the group.
Well, I was very sad to see that you were retiring, in large part because I'm not sure if most people know this about you, but I actually think you have one of the best sense of humors in Congress, and there are many times when you have made me laugh while we're standing on the House floor, and so an underappreciated Mike Conaway trait that I want America to know about.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. I'm a CPA by profession, and typically we're not funny. But among ourselves, we're hilarious. I mean, we can light it up. If you get a group of CPAs together, you can get it's riveting. As an example, when I first started to run for Congress, I was actually in Hong Kong when Larry Combes announced that he was going to retire from Congress the following year. He had just won the 2002 election by 90%. He was here with Ag. He's going to be there forever. Anyway, I'm over there in Hong Kong with the World Congress of Accountants. Think about that, Michael. 5,000 accounting leaders from around the world all in one spot. I mean, I'm surprised Hong Kong was able to survive. Quite frankly, if you could have converted the collective charisma of that group to gunpowder, we couldn't get that door down. But no, it's I appreciate the comments, but typically CPAs aren't very funny, and except when we make fun of ourselves. So.
Well, you're the exception that proves that rule. But let's go back prior to that decision to run for Congress. Tell us where you're from and kind of your upbringing and all that.
Well, West Texas. I'm a quintessential West Texan. My dad was a roughneck, and we moved around a little bit when rigs were running in Borger, Texas. We lived in Borger. When the rigs were running in Kermit, Texas, we lived in Kermit. And we actually moved from Borger to Odessa when I started the 2nd grade because my little sister was born with an internal cleft palate and needed speech therapy. And my dad was roughneck for Phillips Petroleum at that point in time, and so Odessa had a speech therapy program, so they moved us down there. And classic blue collar upbringing. Had a mom and a dad.
And what's a roughneck for the uninitiated?
Oh, okay. Well, a drilling rig. When you're drilling for oil, the men who and women now who man the floor. Typically, in the good old days, it was a 5-person crew, and they're called Roughnecks. And it's a badge of honor because it is a select group of folks. It's pretty dangerous work. My dad lost part of a finger in working in the oil patch. I roughnecked for a couple of summers and a Christmas vacation one time. So it's a
Wow.
it's a
How old were you when you did that?
I was in college, so I was coming out of high school in college, so 18, 19 years old. I would not have let my 18 and 19-year-old sons do that since I raised them. But mom, dad, brother, and sister. I was the oldest of the three, and grew up in Odessa, Texas, which is it's just a good, rock solid, West Texas values kind of community. My family was modest, but I didn't know it. We always had everything that we're supposed to have. I didn't envy anybody else. I didn't know that we didn't have a country club membership and all the other things that go with folks of wealth, because I was loved by Christian parents and raised in a Christian home, and had everything I ever needed. The values that I live today are obviously instilled in me in West Texas, and there's just a special breed of folks. It's the topography is an arid desert-esque. It's an acquired taste. Those from Wisconsin who see where lots of trees are would take a little to get used to. But when I first got on the ag committee, Bob Goodlatte was the chairman. He put me on the forestry committee. Well, I have a community that I represent in District 11 called No Trees, because there are no trees.
Not just a clever name.
Not just a clever name. So I had my picture made in front of the town limit sign. No trees, and of course in the background you can't see any trees at all. And I brought that to Bob and said, Bob, I'm probably not the best guy to serve on forestry. So, but anyway, it's West Texas. I grew up playing playing football. Started in the third grade. The elementary school I went to, we actually had organized football as a part of the school curriculum.
Wow.
And so from the fourth grade on, I played football all the way through high school.
What position?
In high school, I was a defensive end, offensive tackle. In college, I was a center. And my senior year, we won the state championship in Texas. The high school I went to is Odessa Permian. It's the Friday Night Lights phenomenon. Our junior year, we were 4-6 and really stunk up the place. The crosstown rival, OHS, which was led by one Larry Gatlin, the Gatlin brothers guy, won the district championship, and they lost the first game of the playoffs, and the next day the school board fired both coaches. They fired our coach with 4-6. They fired the guy who won the district championship, and we got a new coach. He came in, a fellow named Gene Mayfield from Borger, Texas. Really, the three men in my life that had the most impact on who I am today: my dad, Gene Mayfield, and then a partner I worked with at Price Waterhouse. But Coach Mayfield came in and took a ragtag group of kids that we had one blue chip quality player, and we won the state championship the next year, his first year at Permian. And that started about a 30-year run for Odessa Permian. The book Friday Night Lights was written about the '88 season, and so about 30 years there. Permian was the high school in Texas and for high school football. It's kind of the book, the TV show, and the movie. They're bunches of state championship teams every year in Texas, and this one just happened to be special because it started a program, started a phenomenon that lasted close to 30 years.
And it all started your senior year.
That's right.
In 1965?
65. Yep. I graduated 66, but that was the fall of 65. We weren't rated. I think we were rated like next to last of the 8 teams in the district, and we were in the bottom 8 of the teams. We played a team called San Angelo, which I now represent, San Angelo Central, and they were all world. They were beating people 60, 70, 80 to nothing. The first team rarely played the second half, and we played them at home for the district championship. We had 20,000 people in the stands. The end zones were full. The track was full. The stands were all full. We had a fella die of a heart attack in the stands during the game. Wow. And San Angelo scores right off the bat. Everybody said, all right, it's going to, just another, blowout. And we hang on, and finally in the second half we scored, and went for 2, made it 8-7, and beat those guys, and went on to win the state championship. They actually won the state championship the following year. A side note: their coach was a fellow named Emory Ballard, who went on to have a terrific college career. I ran into Coach Ballard at a fundraiser for a hospital in District 11, my first year in Congress. Spike Dykes, coach at TAC, and Emory Ballard were the honorary co-chairs of this golf tournament. And I went up to Coach Ballard and said, "Hi, Coach Ballard, I'm Mike Conaway. I played for Gene Mayfield in 65. He didn't say hello. He didn't say kiss my ring. He said, "Worst loss of my career." I mean, he flashed back.
This is how many years later?
40.
I love that.
Yeah. And 40 years later, I said, "Well, Coach Ballard, you had a great career. I don't care. It's the worst," because he never did beat Mayfield. Anyway, got that out of his system, and he finally calmed me. "Oh, hi, how you doing? Good to meet you," all that kind of stuff. But he said, "Yeah, I knew you were going for 2. Everybody in the stands, all 20,000 people knew you were going for 2, and they didn't stop it." But anyway, so that's high school.
Wait, just quickly on high school football.
Sure.
What do you say to this has nothing to do with politics, by the way, but I find it more interesting. Parents nowadays, now that we know what we know about concussions and all these stories are coming out, would you, if a parent came to you and said, I think my son wants to play high school football, I'm worried about all this, do you think the benefits, which are undeniable, of teamwork, camaraderie, hard work outweigh those potential risks?
I do in high school. I think when you start beyond that, you've got to make a calculated risk. I wasn't very good at physics, but physics don't change. And so when you've got 300, 350-pound bodies coming at each other at speed, everything on the body, everything in the physical body can be conditioned and strengthened and made better, except the brain inside your skull. There's nothing you can do about that baby. And physics is physics. And if you've got an irresistible force, meaning an irremovable object, something's going to move, and it's going to be the brain banging around inside that helmet, inside your helmet. And so in high school, the size is not quite there yet. Certainly in college, it is. And so if I'm a parent, I guess at the end of the day, every kid needs to make his own decision.
Sure.
My son played high school football. Went on to play baseball in college, but he played high school football, and it also depends on the culture you grow up. If you don't play football in West Texas, it's tough on you. If you got size,
it's still that way. It's not changing based on.
No, it's not. But high school, I think the physics is such that it's still manageable. They're also doing a better job of teaching kids not to lead with their helmet, not to lead with the hat, the way they taught us to play. All of those technique changes can make a difference, but you will get the odd hit that's just circumstances. And when I walked on at East Texas State, and had played 1 year at a junior college, and then moved to East Texas State and walked on. And first day of spring training, I'm trying to make the team, trying to get a scholarship. And so it was an offensive lineman, a board drill. I jumped to the front of the line, and the fellow across from me was a guy named Sam Walton, who was over 300 pounds. And I'm the same size now that I was then, 195 pounds. And again, like I said, I wasn't very good at physics.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking I can pancake this guy because I can kill him. I'm just flat kill him. So I got an extra foot or so off the board, and the snap count, I streaked across. Hit him as hard as I ever hit anybody in my life. Knocked myself out. I'm laying face down to the board. I don't think he moved. 195 and 300, it just doesn't match up. And so big old hand grabbed me on the back of the shoulder pads and pulled me by my feet. My eyes are crossed, and I'm kind of staggering around. And the line coach said, "Well, Conaway, welcome to the Lone Star Conference." And so I made the team and was on scholarship. But
did you play all 4 years in college?
No, I didn't. I got cut. That's back in the days when you could lose your scholarship. And I went through 2 days in my senior year, and they decided to go a different direction.
Just quickly on Friday Night Lights and Permian Panthers. Of the book, the movie, and the TV show, which is your favorite? And as you watch it, with knowledge that no one else has, what's your opinion?
So Bissinger, the author, overplayed a lot of the things. The folks in Odessa gave him unfettered access to the team, let them travel. They were thinking that it's going to be a Hoosiers feel-good kind of thing, and he overplayed a lot of stuff. The movie toned that down and somewhat. I didn't watch the TV show, so I don't know about that. But there would be, over the years, if a coach lost more than 2 games, there would be for sale signs stuck in his front yard on Saturday morning.
Wow.
Now, there's a lot of there about there's too much learning going on up there at Permian because not winning, but that's goofy. The scene where Tim McGraw comes onto the practice field and grabs his cunt and beats him up, that never happened. They don't allow that kind of nonsense goes on. So there were some things that played around, but
you got to watch the TV show. I love the TV show.
Is the TV show good?
But I'm not, I'm from Wisconsin, not Texas, so I'm sure it'd be like whenever someone does a movie about the Marine Corps, I'm like, that's wrong.
Exactly.
That's wrong. Wait, just quickly before we move
on. The stadium in the film is the stadium that they now play in.
Really?
It's not the one we played in. We played in old Barrett Stadium And but Ratliff Stadium is where the movie was filmed. Is the stadium? It's a high school stadium. That's where those kids play.
In the TV show, this guy Riggins always says "Texas forever, Texas forever." Is that a saying that's actually a saying in West Texas, or did they make that up?
It's just Texas.
Yeah, just Texas.
I mean, Texas does have that proud heritage of joining the Union by treaty, and you grow up there, you just have a special feeling about Texas. Most folks don't say I'm a Wisconsin, but folks say I'm a Texan. And if you've traveled overseas, and if I say I'm from Texas, people know exactly where you're from. I mean, they know the shape of the state. They know the.
But it seems like West Texas is even like a degree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Another step above.
Yeah, exactly.
So, oil fields and tough stuff, but good rock solid people. There's I've lived in Midland since '79. Midland and Odessa are 20 miles apart. Fierce rivals on the football field, practically rivals on everything. In fact, if I'm in Odessa, I have to say Odessa Midland. If I'm in Midland, I have to say Midland Odessa because they keep track.
When you're in Midland, you have to deny your Permian Panthers heritage.
No. My mom used to live in Odessa, so I would tell folks I had dual citizenship.
Yeah.
I maintain that process. But no, just good people, the salt of the earth, and a great place to raise children. I raised two boys. My wife and I raised 2 boys, 2 girls. And they're all good citizens today. It's a wonderful place to be able to be from, and I live there today.
So So you go to college at East
Texas State.
East Texas State, and did you know what you wanted to study? Was politics even on your radar back then? Was being a CPA on your radar? What did you think?
No, I didn't. I'm not sure I even knew there were such things as CPAs. I wanted to be a lawyer because the world was short of lawyers, and I was trying to fix that shortage. And interesting things. Your life turns on small decisions that, looking back, are huge, but at the time it's just kind of a run-of-the-mill deal. I made up the requirement that to get into law school you had to have 6 hours of accounting. I just made it up out of whole cloth. I didn't, and so I'm taking the accounting classes and I'm taking principal. Second semester, my instructor, Charles Cato, said, "Hey, Mike, why don't you stop by my office?" I said, "Okay." So I stopped in. He said, "So what's your major?" I said, "Pre-law." He said, "Oh my goodness, why?" I said, "I'm going to law school." He said, "Well, you can get into law school with a PE degree." And I said, "You can?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "So what happens if you don't get to go to law school? What are you going to do with a pre-law degree?" I said, "Well, I'm going to law school." He said, I know that, but just humor me. What happens? I said, "Well," he said, "what can you do?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, you can sell shoes at Kenny's or Payless, but then you can do that without a pre-law degree." He said, "That pre-law thing is worthless." Now, the pre-law department's not going to tell you that because they want students over there, but you've shown an aptitude for accounting. Why don't you major in accounting? And that way, just on the outside chance that you don't get to go to law school, you'll have something to do to fall back on. And so that made sense to me, and I majored in accounting, did really well, and I was a top accounting grad my senior year. And
So you may not have been good at physics, but you were good at math.
I'm good at math, multiplication, divisions, subtraction, addition. So, but anyway, I had an aptitude for it, and that changed my life because I come out of East Texas State, which is now Texas A&M Commerce, and I got that letter that in fact, I'd won the only lottery I've ever won, and got that letter that said, "Your friends and neighbors think you need to serve your nation." So I got drafted, and went into the Army.
So this would have been what, late
70?
70. Okay.
Yeah, and I graduated 4 years in 70.
Wow.
So I go with Price Waterhouse. My wife gets a job at a law firm, and I'm rich because the last semester of school was pretty hard, and we sold the car to try to finish and make it all work and all that kind of stuff. So I'm working, she's working, and we're rich. I mean, I've got more money I've ever had in my life.
You got married in college?
Got married right after my sophomore year, yeah. And so I was married the last 2 years of college, and then I get drafted, inducted in mid-October, and start making what a E1 makes, 125. So we go back to being poor again. But it was a wonderful experience. I did my basic at Fort Ord, which is Monterey Peninsula. It's a resort kind of worldly. And first time I'd been to California, I guess. So second time I'd been to California. And then sent to Fort Hood, and I wound up spending my whole time at Fort Hood. Mm-hmm. I got shanghaied into the MP Corps. Being a responsible citizen, I was supposed to report at 7 a.m. on Monday morning, the first Monday in January of 1971. So Sunday afternoon, Julie and I went over there, and we were driving around trying to find the 384th replacement company. Can't find it. We've driven by the stockade 14 times looking for it. So I'm going to ask. They should know where to get there. So I go in the company office, and there at the 256 MP company, this crusty old first sergeant sitting in there and says, "So, First Sergeant, I'm looking for the 384th replacement. I've got to be there in the morning. and I don't know where it is. Can you show me? Tell me where it is. He kind of looks up. He's reading a book, so he looks up and goes, "Can you type?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Right here." I said, "No, it's three here. Shut up. It's right here. You'll be here tomorrow at 7 o'clock." I said, "Okay, First Sergeant." So I showed up the morning for somehow. Now, back in those days, First Sergeants ruled the world.
Yeah.
And obviously, all these personnel decisions were ruled by First Sergeants as well. So I got shanghaied in the MP Corps. I wound up being a traffic accident investigator. Had a great time. There's nothing more exciting than running with red lights and sirens, running through intersections, blowing through red lights on the wrong side of the road, all that kind of stuff, because you're heading to McDonald's to try to get there before the other MPs get there for the 2 a.m. Food that they give away. So, but I had a great time in the military. Spent the whole time.
I mean, this is 70 to 72.
Right.
So, I mean, Nixon is pursuing Vietnamization, but, I mean, you don't know, right? I mean, you could have been deployed.
Yeah, and my little brother also won the lottery, so he's drafted about 3 months later. I was a college graduate; he wasn't. They sent him to to Fort Polk for infantry training, and he went to Vietnam. So he did serve in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And came home. He did fine, but he served. But I did not go. I didn't go to Vietnam, and I never ever. I don't even tell people I was in during the Vietnam era, because I don't want anybody can ever think that I'm laying claim to any of that honor that goes to my little brother and all the other men and women who served in Vietnam.
But as you look back on that time, I mean, a lot of people said you'd have to go back to the late 60s to find a time when the country's as divided as it was now. Do you kind of remember the vibe back then being that polarized, or was it different because you were in Texas? And
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I was pretty oblivious to it, and maybe I was in college when all of the riots were going on and all the stuff was happening. But it was it's Commerce, Texas, and we were really not affected by it. I was trying to think of the kid's name that off the relay team in Mexico City, John Carlos. John Carlos actually went to East Texas State as well, and he's raising his fist at the '68 Olympics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously aware of it, but it really didn't impact my life at all. And then, but clearly, historically, the nation is divided, much like it was then, today, and then. But I really didn't sense it. I just, putting one day at a time, and I really didn't get involved in much of that.
So 2 years in the Army, then what kind
Came
of
back to Price Waterhouse.
Okay.
I'd gone to work for Price Waterhouse right out in June of 70. Came back and I went back to work for them. Had what I consider a really good career there. Most of my clients were in Odessa in Midland, and so I finally convinced the firm to open a Midland office and move me out there. I came out there. I was at that point in time in the tax department, and we had the audit team went out in '78. I came out in '79, and lived in Midland ever since. At that point in time, there was a big oil boom going on. The oil prices had gone from $3.25 a barrel to $9 or $10 a barrel. So people were, a lot of stuff going on. I left the firm and ultimately wound up with George W. Bush as a partner. He and I were partners in the oil business. I wish I'd have been partners in the baseball team. I'd have made a lot more money. But
Bush 43.
Yes, Bush 43. We spent 5 great years doing that, and had a great run. We sold the oil company to a company in Dallas called Harkin Energy, and I stayed in Midland. My wife at the time, Julie, was battling leukemia, and was doing a bone marrow transplant, and so I needed to keep the boys and her there in a support group. She passed shortly thereafter, lost that fight, and I became a relatively small cadre of single-parent fathers living above the poverty line for several years, and then God put.
How old were you at the time?
I was 36, wow. And the boys were 9 and 12. Excuse me, 12 and 15. Fast forward 4 years, Suzanne, the lady I'm married to now for the last 30 years almost, was her husband was killed in a plane crash, and she had 2 daughters that were 9 and 12 when their dad was killed, and God put us together. We melded those families together. The kids were all stair-stepped. Nobody got overlapped, and that was in '91. So we've been married 28 years, and it's been spectacular.
Was she just from your area in
She
Texas,
was from Midland,
or?
yeah. And
Okay.
I knew her husband, Randy, was a CPA as well, Randy Kidwell, and business-wise, I knew him, but I didn't know her. We actually went to the same church, First Baptist Church, but I had never met her. And of course, after an appropriate amount of time, the the matchmakers at First Baptist began to think about putting the two of us together, and it worked. It worked really well.
Well, I got introduced to my wife through the Catholic Mafia in Wisconsin, so I think that's better than any dating app. Or,
Well, at this time, cell phones hadn't been invented at that point in time. There's the dark ages of 1991, and so. But anyway, that's kind of the family's background. So we have a blended family with. We don't use the word step with our children because my daughters, I've been their dad longer than Randy was, and my boys, she's been the mom longer than Julie was, and so the grandkids, they know about they know the story, they understand that, but they don't, we don't make any distinction between any of the kids. They're all just ours, and it's worked really well for us.
That's great. So how old is the youngest then of the four?
She'll be 39 in March.
Are all four in Texas, or have they scattered to
unfortunately, my older son, our older son, lives in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is almost in Texas.
That's right.
And my three grandsons I should have. Well, early on, it was part of Texas. Somehow that got given away. But
that's right.
But so I've got three grandsons who were almost born in Texas, but the others are all in Texas. Yeah.
So take me to, at what point does the idea of politics enter into the picture? Was it your business relationship with Bush 43 and seeing his experience as governor, or at what point are you thinking, okay, I've had a great run as a CPA and a very successful private sector career, well, let me think about politics and public service?
I had volunteered for everything known to man in West Texas throughout the 80s and 90s, the YMCA and the United Way and all those things, all the things you typically do. But being with W for 5 years, his dad was VP that whole time frame. So there was something political going every day. And his dad came to middle as VP came to middle a couple of times. People would come through the office all the time looking for his endorsement and asking me for advice, all that kind of good stuff. In fact, I was cleaning out some stuff a while back, and I actually found some of Lamar Smith's campaign literature, our colleague from last term, and it had a 14-year-old picture of Lamar Smith when he was 14 on it. So I brought it to the chairman's meeting, and he and I typically sat beside each other. And so before the meeting started, I kind of slid that over to him and said, "Hey, I'm going to show this to the group today." And he snatched it up and said, "No, you're not." Anyway, but he had come by in '86, I guess, looking for Bush's. But yeah, with Bush was there. Then when he became governor in '95. He appointed me to the State Board of Accountancy, which is a regulatory agency. It's a volunteer job, a regulatory agency that oversees the practice of accounting in Texas, testing and disciplining and all this kind of stuff. That got me involved with the Texas legislature. I did it for about 7.5 years. Texas meets only every other year, and the odd-numbered year. So I went through 3 sessions with them. I got some legislation done that took the agency, the accounting board, out from under the appropriations process, set us up as a kind of a standalone agency. And so I would work that side of it. And I got, I thought I could do that job. I'd been on the school board for a term back in the 85 to 88. People talked about running for mayor and all this kind of good stuff, but I kind of decided that if I were going to run, it would be the U.S. House seat or our state Senate seat, which the districts were not. They were about the same size in terms of people, but they were different configurations, of course. Larry Combest was our House member. He was going to be here forever. Like I said, he got 90% of the vote in 2002. Our state senator had begun to kind of make some noises that he might not be running longer, and I been involved with Republican politics when Bush was there and all that, kept that up and everything else. And so like I said, I was in Hong Kong in 2002. Combest announced he was resigning, and the following May, special election. There were 17 of us ran in that special election. 11 Republicans, a Democrat, a Green Party, a Constitutionalist, some guy who never showed up on the campaign trail, just put his name on the ballot. And I came in second with a runoff with Nagelbauer. 30 days later, we had the runoff, and Randy beat me by 587 votes. And then at that point in time, Texas was going through a redistricting process with Tom DeLay and Tom Craddock, and they redrew the congressional lines in 2004. There was an open seat that I was living in, and I ran and had to be at the right spot at the right time, and ran in that seat in 2004, and I've been elected this is my 8th term. Through all of that, though, Michael, the core issue is there's a verse in Luke 12:48 that says, "To whom much is given, much is required." And God had blessed me with a little bit of talent and a lot of life experiences that I thought qualified me to do this job. You and I both know there are 2 sets of skills. There's a set of skills you have to do to get the job, and a set of skills you have to do the job. and I was way confident I had the set of skills to do the job. I just needed to demonstrate that I had that set of skills to get the job, which is generally unusual for CPAs to be able to demonstrate that skill set to get the job. I've been blessed to serve here since 2005.
So talk to me about that. When you get to Congress in 2005, what is the atmosphere, and how do you think about? Are you thinking at that point, okay, I want to be commissioner of the Agriculture Committee one day, and therefore I have to do these things? Or what was your kind of plan going into it, and how did that plan survive or not survive first contact with congressional reality?
So the campaign in 2003, 2 and 3, and then in 2004. Ag is a big deal in District 11. Cotton is the dominant row crop, cattle, sheep, and goats, those kind of things. So I had already, as a part of that process, knew that representing them, that I would need to be on the Ag Committee, because those folks have been represented by somebody on the Ag Committee forever. And it was just a natural that I would take up the Ag, trying to get on the Ag Committee. I also represented Goodfellow Air Force Base. I'd served in the military, represented Goodfellow Air Force Base, and so the Armed Services seemed to make sense as well. So I get here. Those are the two committees that I want to get on. Turns out I was able to be on both of them, and I've been able to serve on both of them. Hassert came to me, or the system, the steering committee or whatever, came to me in 2005 and said, hey, you want to serve on the budget committee? And I said, sure. So they put me on that, which turned out, I did that 2 terms, and that turned out to be a great learning experience. You really learn what's going on when you serve on the budget committee. Now, you don't have a lot of impact on what the budget actually winds up doing, but you learn an awful lot by sitting on that committee in terms of where the money goes, how it goes, all those kind of things. And then I moved from there. I had one shot at trying to get on the. So 05, 06, we're in the majority. Hassert is speaker. Tom DeLay is the majority leader from Texas. And so every week our Texas and the Republicans meet every week at Thursday, and it's a must-attend event. And so we're there every week. Tom DeLay showing up as a leader. We were getting the inside skinny and all the stuff that's going on. So we're pretty good stuff. And then Tom has his troubles and has to step down, and we start that process. And then in 06 we get beat, and the Dems take us out, and so they take over, and they're supposed to be speaker in 07. So early 07, I went to then Minority Leader Boehner and said, John, I want to serve on the Ways and Means Committee, and I'm going to do everything possible to make it impossible for you to not support me for that program. And he kind of offhandedly said, well, Mike, I don't think we'll have 3 Texans on the Ways and Means Committee. Well, I ignored him because I didn't think it was something. I just ignored it. So anyway, I raised more money, helped more people, did all the things you do to try to lay the groundwork for that. 08, we lose more seats, but I'm still pretty ginned up. So I go to him and said, all right, here's my stuff I've done, and yep. He goes, so Mike, what part of not having 3 Texans on Ways and Means did you not understand? And I said, well, you were serious? He said, well, yeah, I was serious. So I tucked my tail between my legs, wandered off, and then December, that was November of 08. December of 08, he calls and says, hey, Mike, yes, sir, need you to serve on the Ethics Committee. Okay. So I put me on the Ethics Committee as a reward for all the hard work I'd done. I remember standing beside John Klein on the floor first couple of days of the new session in 2009, and we're sitting there talking, and we both happen to look toward Boehner, and Boehner gives me one of these finger points, and come over to him kind of thing, and Klein goes, Boehner going to take you to the woodshed? I said, no, he's already put me on ethics. There's nothing else he can do to me. So I went over, and he said, hey, you want to serve on the Intel Committee? I said, well, what do I have to give up? He said, nothing. I said, yes, I do, because as you know, Intel is the most sought-after committee. I'd never said a word to him about Intel, but I think because of what I'd done the 4 years that he'd watched me work and what I did really on the Ways and Means, but turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me is to not get on Ways and Means, but to stay on Ag, to stay on Armed Services, because it really fits the district. My problem with Ag was that I only ate every day. My only involvement with Ag up to that point in time was I would eat every day. Yeah. And I had no background in whatsoever. I'd never had a client that was a farmer. Yeah. I'd never done a Schedule F. And so the folks in West Texas took a real flyer on me. The cotton farmers and others took a real flyer on me to support me to be to be their guy on Ag. And then I get on the Intel Committee in 09. I'm still on the Intel Committee because I've got a couple of waivers. And it's just been a great run to have those 3 committees. I've had a great run. Chairmanship. Obviously, everybody gets here wants to be chairman of something. Yeah. The type AAA personalities. There are no shrinking violets that show up in Congress. Everybody wants to run something. Yeah. The whole show if they could, obviously. But you want to run something. And so I got lucky on ag because Jerry Moran and Tom Luke and Frank Lucas were ahead of me on the committee. Jerry runs for the Senate in Kansas and wins, and so he comes off the committee. Well, that moves me up a notch and allows me to become chairman after Frank, because had Jerry stayed, it would have been Frank, Jerry, Frank, and then me. And so I was fortunate that Jerry left, and I became chairman of the ag after 10 years, which is pretty quick for a full committee. Yeah,
but fair to say, less by design based on where you started off in 2005.
That's right. It was just kind of, God kept opening doors. I didn't, when you first get as a freshman, the idea of becoming chairman is there, but it's not particularly realistic.
No.
Because you have to stay 5 terms, probably minimum, and you're not even sure you're going to get to say a second term, because after that, that first re-elect, you're worried and nervous and about every single vote and all those kind of good things. But it's worked terrific, and I've had a great run. This has been the highlight of my professional life, and just a spectacular 15-plus years.
Talk to me a little bit about the Intel Committee. So as you alluded to, the Intel Committee is probably, still on par with Ways and Means as the most coveted committee. But would it be fair to say that in 2005 it still had that reputation as very bipartisan? This is where you go to kind of put the interest of the country ahead of everything else, do serious work, and that it's less of that now based on some recent things, or is that an uncharitable assessment?
A bit of a twist. It was working badly when Sylvester Reyes, when Pelosi took over in 7, she made Sylvester Reyes chairman instead of Jane Harmon. And Jane should have been the chairman, and Sylvester and Pete Hoekstra didn't work as well together probably as they should have. Sylvester was a bit outmatched. And then when Dutch Ruppersberger came in and Mike Rogers came in, that was the apex of working together. Those two guys liked each other. They worked well together. Neither one of them were particularly camera hogs, and so we just did the work that was supposed to get done on Intel, kind of behind the scenes and out of the spotlight, which is what we're supposed to do. The work of the committee is just spectacular. I had been around the military. Obviously, I'd done at that point in time in my third term, and had a lot of experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan, seeing men and women who put their lives on the line, every single day. And that was the first time I've come face to face with the clandestine service, and became aware that we had men and women just as stout-hearted, just as patriotic as men and women in uniform, except they don't have on uniforms, they don't have a safety net, and they go in some of the ugliest places in the world and try to make sure that the bad guys don't sneak up on us. And there's tremendous respect for the clandestine service and everything that our 17 agencies do and work at it. And then, of course, when the Dems took back over in 16, 17. 17. I don't know.
Well, maybe it started in
when
16 with the election of Trump.
Yeah, and
I guess prior to that, did Nunes and Schiff work well together?
Not real well particularly, but it wasn't a deal, because all we had was the work of the committee.
Sure.
And so, there wasn't anything partisan about it. There are no cameras down there. You're just talking about, how do we protect sources and methods? How do we make sure the men and women in these places have the things they need to get? Are they using the tools? As it turns out, one of the questions we needed to ask more is, are they using the tools we give them properly? Because as you've seen with things that happened since, that wasn't necessarily the case then when under President Obama and his leadership team at FBI and Justice took advantage of some of that. But it really got in the ditch in the election of 16. As soon as President Trump wins, he wasn't supposed to win. President-elect Trump, they go after him. A little concerned with that Intelligence Committee assessment that was made, all the things that went on, and then what you've seen happen 17, 18, and now through into 20, 17, 18, 19, and now 20, with what's going on. The committee has not worked nearly as well as it did under the Mike Rogers and Dutch Ruppersberger leadership. It really functioned well at that point in time. We still do some intel work, but there's been distractions. There's been, it's just a different feel for it because of the big publicity that's gone on since the investigation starting in 17 on Russia.
And I think it was unprecedented in terms of the Republican members of the committee basically prior to us taking a vote to censorship had a move within the committee to push back against his leadership, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And obviously the committee has now taken the lead role in impeachment, which is odd, I would say, for the Intelligence Committee. Maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about that.
It's really not the Intelligence Committee because it's Adam Schiff personality and whatever those dynamics are going on between Nadler, Schiff, Speaker Pelosi, et cetera. The Intel Committee deals with classified information, some of the nation's most secrets, the most critical secrets we have. The committee is exposed to. We know those. We got great secrets, and sources and methods. If a source got outed, that source will get killed. I mean, this is high stakes stuff, and so typically our jurisdiction is things involved in the investigation that's been going on with respect to this phone call, the whistleblower. All that, there are no sources and methods involved. There's no secrets involved. It is not classified. It's purely jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee, period. But for the fact that there was a whistleblower coming out of the Intel Committee, Adam laid claim to the jurisdiction, and Nadler was unable to fight him off. And so you've seen what you've seen is that their side preferred Adam to Nadler in an area where I was chairman of Ag, and chairmen by design are stunningly jealous of jurisdiction. I want my jurisdiction, and whatever I can get from you, be just fine. You never want to give up jurisdiction. That's just not what you do. Well, I've got to believe that Jerry Nadler felt the same way. In fact, he pitched the steering committee, I understand, on the idea that he would be the best prosecutor if they were going to impeach President Trump. And so really no intel stuff at all with respect to this. Now, we did have the Russia investigation that investigating what Russia did, and did they meddle in elections? Was there something going on between the Trump administration or the Clinton, not Trump administration, but the Trump campaign, the Hillary Clinton's campaign, all that kind of good stuff? That was part of the Intel Committee's responsibility, and Adam, had that lead on the Democrat side. As it turned out, I got to lead the investigation on the Republican side, and so that was there were sources and methods associated with that, and a reason for having it going. But really, this impeachment thing doesn't have much to do at all with the Russia issue, and Adam just was able to work his magic and get into the lead role in this impeachment.
I want to pivot or rather elevate to kind of the way in which Congress works and the committees or doesn't work, but just one sort of more policy question. You've been very active. I would say the most active member on the Armed Services Committee in terms of the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party in general and the Chinese Communist Party's relationship with telecoms like Huawei, ZTE. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, not to blow smoke at you, but you're also among that few of us who fight, and yours.
Well, I figure now that you're leaving, somebody's got to steal all your work and take credit for it.
No, Michael, you're as articulate on the threat as anybody. But yes, it is a threat. I interrupted you.
Well, I just it's curious. One of the things I've been saying is I think regardless of who wins in 2020 for the presidency, I actually think the new consensus position among Democrats and Republicans, notwithstanding all the division over Russia and all this other stuff, is basically that our foremost competitor or threat is China, and this is a massive sea change in U.S. foreign policy. I think you'd have to go back to either the end of or the beginning of the Cold War to find a sea change. Just be curious kind of what your sense of the future direction of China policy is. That
is exactly my sense of it. It's not exactly there right this second. We're not having kids in elementary schools do nuclear drills, getting under the desks and all that kind of good stuff. However, over the next several decades, China will be a competitor, no doubt, and that's fine. We love competition, but there's going to be a threat, and there's where we have to be because the Chinese use a whole of nation approach to whatever it is they're doing. Xi Jinping is leading that nation, and he's really still very popular there, and has a vision that by 2050 China will be the center of the universe, and everything else will orbit China, including the United States. And it's not in our best interest, and I don't believe it's in the interest of peace in the world to have a dictatorship the way China is having that kind of role. And so their economy will get bigger than ours. Their military will at some point in time be able to go toe-to-toe with us, and all those things that are going on. And in the meantime, we don't need to be the Neville Chamberlain of this fight to ignore what's happening. And so to the extent that Huawei is dominating 5G and ZTE and equipment and Levano and all these things that are going on, things made in China, just know in my heart, I believe that if the Chinese want to do something with one of those commercial ventures as the government, the Communist Party, they will do it. And whoever's running that company will agree.
Be forced to agree.
Huh?
Be forced to agree.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the Chinese believe that if you have any Chinese ethnicity whatsoever, regardless of what passport you're traveling on, that you owe allegiance to China. And if they come calling because you happen to be in a position of influence or a position where somebody you can get some information they want, they're going to demand that you do it.
Yeah.
And if you have any ties back home, they will use that leverage to make sure you do what they want them to do. And they're just they're calculating like that. They're long-term players. They go as far as they can. Then when they get pushed back, they kind of ease up, and then that pushback ebbs. As an example, the South China Sea, big brouhaha over what they're doing in those islands and the ecological disaster that they've created out there. Big pushback. They lose the case, and so they kind of calm down, and the world quits looking at them, and they start building them again.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping stood on the Rose Garden of the South Lawn and lied to the American people, looked us in the eye and said, we are not weaponizing, we are not militarizing those islands, and lied. He knew exactly what he was doing. And so you just have to know that you cannot trust them. I don't trust them. You have to be able to verify whatever they agree to and try to hold their feet to the fire. But it's in our best interest to make sure that we don't let them get us into a position where we don't have any other choices. We don't have to go to war with them. That's not what I'm saying. But we have to be strong enough to be able to push back at that world dominance belief that Xi Jinping has on behalf of the Communist Party in China.
So you have reached leadership positions both in terms of domestic policy in the House and foreign policy in the House. You've seen it all over the last, would it be 15 years? 16
I've been in my
years
16th year, yeah.
So part of the orientation, we're running out of time. I got to be quick. Okay. The reason for doing this podcast with retiring members is it seems like every 2 years people run against the status quo in D.C. and run against Congress specifically, saying we need to drain the swamp. Congress is broken. I'd just be curious, do you think Congress has a problem? If so, how would you diagnose that problem? And what can we do to fix it? 3 very easy questions.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
First off, drain the swamp was Nancy Pelosi's theme in 2006. And so I'm not a fan of that phraseology. I'm not sure why Republicans are using it, but they do. And I'm not sure what it means. It starts with voters. They send people to Congress that are trying to represent them. Our nation is divided. The House of Representatives is downstream from the American people.
Yeah.
All 435 of us have a constituent back home that we listen to. We try to represent, try to get their votes for. We bring their ideas and their passion, their fervor to this floor, this body, to try to operate. I've been blessed to serve the second most conservative district in the United States. Wow. Mac Thornberry's District 13 is 0.5% more conservative than District 11. So, my people don't hang around with bump into folks generally that have liberal ideas, and so it's really pretty homogeneous. But that's not the case everywhere. And so we're downstream from the American people. And so as I see the impact that social media is having, the impact that the internet's having, that cable news and cable radio, cable TV, and all these folks who talking heads who get up there every day and say, how can I make the most people mad today? Because if I can make them mad, then tomorrow they'll turn back in and my ratings will go up and I'll make more money. These guys are entertainers. They're not journalists. They're just entertainers. And we as consumers of all that have got to understand what's going on and begin to limit how much of that. I mean, I have folks back home that just they'll watch the same program twice. Back when Bill O'Reilly was on, they had him. He played twice during the day, and I have people watch the same program twice, ginned up about it. Well, we need as consumers of that, we need to do a better job of filtering out much of that because it is just entertainment. But until America fixes it, I don't know that it's going to get fixed up here. George Will says that he's a pessimist himself. And he says he's a pessimist because 90% of the time he's correct. And the 10% of the time he's wrong, he's ecstatic. And so what I'm about to tell you is George Will pessimism. I don't know that we can fix this on our own. I'm not so sure that we're not going to have to have some sort of cataclysmic event that will force us to look to the overall betterment of our nation, to rally to our own flag, to say, all right, I'm going to put my petty differences aside on this and this and this and look to the greater good of this nation, and be willing to make those kind of sacrifices that look at it. It's got to be some sort of World War II-esque. Doesn't have to be a war, but it's got to be something bigger than 9/11 that says to this, all right, as a nation, we've got to rally. We've got to become Americans first, not Republicans, not Democrats. We've got to be Americans and begin to go at whatever these issues are. And I hope I'm wrong. I pray that I'm wrong. I pray that we can turn the tide from the split that you see growing on and the divisiveness that you see in the media that pull us apart further and further every single day on purpose, because that's what gets ratings. That's what gets the news. But I'm not so sure that God's not going to have some sort of an event that will happen. Back home, I get to represent what we refer to in a lot of places as the buckle in the Bible belt. And if you look at the nation of Israel in the Old Testament, when their hearts were right with God, they would be a blessed nation. They were His chosen people. But when their hearts would get wrong with God, when they begin to do the things, quite frankly, that we're doing today as a nation. Now, I don't know that they ever killed 62 million babies in a 47-year period, but they did some awful things. And when that happened, God would use terrible things to reset their hearts back to Him. And we are on that path. We all sing God Bless America. We all brag about God blessing us, and we pray, and God, we trust our national motto. But we're not a blessable nation. 62 million murders in 47 years. God can't bless that nation. And so if you look at what we've done as a nation in the last 100 years, I would argue that there's never been a nation to do as much good for the rest of the world and ask so little in return as the United States of America, period. It's unprecedented in world history what we've done. I personally believe that was God's divine mission for us as a people. He's blessed us with the blessings we've had. Looking to the next 100 years, if we lay that mantle down, if we defend our freedom, defend our liberty, we lay that down or God takes it away from us, then do you expect China to pick it up, or Russia to pick it up, or radical Islam to pick it up? No. And so, God had a mission for us. I think He's got one going forward, but He can't use us in the way that He has in the past, the way we are right now. We are fundamentally unblessable. And unless we begin to turn our hearts back to God, John Adams wrote that only a moral and religious people can self-govern. We will lose the ability to self-govern if we don't reclaim that moral high ground that allowed this nation to exist for 240 plus years. And I'm deeply concerned about that we've got some sort of a cataclysmic event coming that would turn our nation's hearts back to God, would turn it back to our own flag, would rally this nation to look to the greater good of the nation as opposed to what's individually good for me and my little small balkanized group that because of the internet, I can make it look like a monster group and make everybody talk about stuff that's pretty much inane. But again, George Will pessimism. I hope I'm wrong, and if I am, I'll be ecstatic.
But for those who, let's say, don't come from the Bible Belt, or maybe don't share your faith, or even just have a different view of faith and think that more God sort of puts things in motion and humans exercise free will, and the chips sort of play out as they will. Well, let me phrase this question differently. What advice would you give to the person that occupies your seat coming in? Beyond, if you sort of stipulate that you can't legislate like a renewal of faith.
No, that's right.
And what is there? Are there practical things we could do to sort of jumpstart the rejuvenation of the institution as we await sort of all the upstream issues you identified among the American people getting better?
First thing is live them. Live those values. Don't come up here and do something that embarrasses the nation. I love this institution, the House of Representatives. When I was sworn in 2005, at that point in time, only 239 other Texans had ever had the high honor of representing Texans in the House of Representatives. The millions and millions of people who have lived in Texas since 1845, only 239 when I got here. That is a stunningly high honor. I love this institution, Michael. It is enshrined in our Constitution. This is worthy work. And so don't come here and do anything to embarrass this institution. Your personal habits, whatever it is you're doing, you come here and be that person of integrity and honesty and faith, quite frankly, that is enshrined in that deal. Live those values, and then really work real hard to try to use this pulpit, because it is a pulpit. Back home, the speech I just made to you guys, I've made hundreds of times to every Lions Club, Rotary Club, Chamber of Commerce thing I go to, I typically finish up with some sort of a plea that let's begin to be that moral people that can self-govern. Let's have a moral code that, for me, it's a Judeo-Christian model, but every one of us need a moral code to live by so that we can, in fact, keep this nation blessable. And so use that pulpit to have that message. We can't legislate it, wouldn't intend to, because that's not how it works. But you got to lead it, and as a leader, live that. Yeah. But don't ever do anything to embarrass this institution. And you and I've got plenty of examples out there where men and women have done stupid things in their personal life or in their public life, whatever, to embarrass the institution. And it just hurts me physically almost when I see one of our colleagues do something that brings disgrace to the institution or makes people think less of us, the House of Representatives. Not you and me. We're just men of feet of clay. But the institution is worthy, and I love it.
What so are you the type of person who, when you leave the house, will actually be able to relax and let your brain rest? So if not, what's next for Mike Conaway?
Well, something, because I had a couple of weeks at Christmas this year that my wife finished up by saying, I married you for life, not lunch. And so every day you're going to go somewhere else. No, the two things about this job that I'm going to miss. One, the intellectual stimulation. You and I come here every single day. We got to go vote on stuff that we're not fully prepared to do. We're running 900 miles an hour to try to get there. I love doing town halls because I never know what's going to be asked. And you got to be on your game every single day. The pace and the excitement in the interview. I guess I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie because I get ginned up about this stuff. And then the people that I get to deal with, you and others, my colleagues on this floor, I don't know how to replace those. But that those two issues. But I'm going to have to find something, because I hate the word retirement. I don't use it for myself because all my buddies, and I'm 71, so I got some folks who are in that genre. About 6 months later, after they retire, they look 100, then they die. And so I'm not intended to do any of that. I'm going to go at it 90 miles an hour or something. But at this stage, I'm not leaving because I don't love the job. I love this job. I'm leaving because it's time for somebody else to do it and for me to go home. So I'll be doing something.
So I have 1 minute left. What do you do for fun?
Play golf. I'm terrible. I'm one of the world's worst, but I love the game and play golf and then this job. So.
And I want to close out on maybe this is a weird question, but it's obvious to me in this conversation how important your faith is to you. And I think one of the problems in Congress is we never get to connect to each other. There's really time to connect to each other as human beings and discuss our challenges. How have you found time? I mean, what's your process for making time for your spiritual relationship with God and using that as a way to build bridges across
Well, it's every day. I mean, I go to church obviously on Sundays, but up here on Wednesdays, there's a group of us who get together for a Bible study. Good men of faith, rock solid men of faith. And so it's an accountability group, 8 o'clock on Wednesday mornings, and it's one of those days you try really hard not to miss. And so that's helped me connect and stay connected during the week from what's going on. But you got to read the Bible every day. You got to pray all the time, and you got to keep yourself avoid those things that are temptations and all the things you just do to try to live a faith life and walk with Christ. I mean, he tells me, the instructions are in the book, and you try to live those instructions.
Great. Well, Mike Conaway, thank you for leading by example, and thanks for serving the country the last 15 years.
It's been a great honor.
Great. Thank you.
The dude